So, at the time that this podcast will air, I will be on the road on a cross country trip with my oldest son, moving him out of the house and getting him set up to go. And as this date has been coming closer, I think about his childhood and his youth. And I think about how when he was 7 was when I learned about gender. And having a loved one transition opened up all the adults' eyes. I mean, it challenged, as I've mentioned in previous episodes about gender beliefs, it challenged how we understood gender and how we looked at people, but yet not the kids. The kids did not seem challenged. They understood. They were very matter of fact, like, okay, if that's who that person says they are, that's who they are. And it gave me so much hope of how it could be, how accepting the kids were and how that's possible. We began to help loved ones who were not as matter of fact about it understand, grapple with their beliefs, grapple with their understanding, begin to have more accurate understanding on gender. We also helped with so many obstacles in our loved ones' way, like the education system and especially the healthcare system. And I began to help them. We all did, but I'm going to focus on my part of the journey. I believed that education could fix it all. I still believe that. I believe that we have certain things that we don't understand. And if we did, we would be much more accepting of gender and it would not be this confusing and challenging thing. So, there are a few understandings that I think education could help with. The first one is the difference between sex and gender, and it's something I've talked about in many episodes. If you go to episode 2, you can hear the full description of that. But what that would help, that understanding of difference, would help us as healthcare providers stop making assumptions and stop setting expectations. And this goes for more than just transgender and non binary patients to benefit from these lack of assumptions. All the patients would benefit. I think about patients who identify as women that don't want to have a baby. Imagine if we didn't assume that. Imagine if we didn't assume that somebody who identifies as a man does not need emotional support. I think about this a lot when I think about pregnancies that have ended tragically or any sort of loss of a pregnancy or a baby. So much focus goes on to those who identify as women. And many times, those who identify as men are ignored. There's a thought that they don't want support, that they'd be uncomfortable receiving support, and they're often forgotten. Think about if we stopped making these assumptions or thought we had an understanding because we knew some biological characteristics, how much that would allow all our patients to present themselves as themselves so they don't have to worry about expectations or what somebody's going to think because they know their biological sex or they know how they identify their gender. This would be true freedom. So I think that is one of the understandings that would make a huge difference. Another understanding that would make a huge difference is that the understanding that gender diversity is an expected aspect of biodiversity, that we know biology is diverse, that survival relies on the diversifying of biology. And I think that would help us better understand that it's not a psychiatric disorder. And I go into that in greater detail in episode 25 from Disorder to Diversity if you want to hear more. But the basic is if we can understand that gender diversity is a part of biological diversity, we'll be able to better treat our patients by not assuming that everything is psychiatric. It would lead to less misdiagnoses, it would lead to better communication with our patients, and it would lead to more celebration of diversity. Understanding, instead of being afraid of what's different between us, understanding that we all are diverse in some way and being able to celebrate that, whether that's our gender or anything else about ourselves. Accepting that Affirming that, identifying that is going to make the world a better place and the experience for our patients better. And the last thing I will say that education on gender is going to help is understanding that patients need medical care, meaning transgender, non binary patients need medical care, and therefore physicians need to be aware. Now, I'm not saying you need to know every little detail, but regardless of our specialty, I'll give you an example here. Regardless of our specialty, we all understand diabetes. Even if we don't know how to manage insulin for a diabetic patient, we're aware of diabetes. We're aware that there are other treatments. We're aware that there's some of the protocols around it, even if we can't determine medication for a patient. We have that awareness. And having this awareness of gender affirming care and its protocols and how they're used, again, not having to know the doses, but the general protocol will help us in not making mistakes, not creating harm because we're asking patients to give a pregnancy test when they've never even had chest formation, much less a period. It would help us if we understood the basic protocols, the basic science behind gender. It would help us be able to provide for patients better and less reports of patients having to educate the providers on what it means to be transgender or non binary, what is gender affirming care. And it will also help those patients get the care they need that is not gender affirming care. So, all of this will lead to a greater acceptance, a greater experience for those patients, knowing that there's a baseline understanding of their providers, but it also will ripple out into the rest of society and having greater acceptance of gender diversity. The thing is, all these understandings will make our society a better place, a safer place, not only for our patients, but our loved ones, our families. Why? Because we will know through this education that all patients will get better care because practitioners will make less assumptions. They will listen closer. They'll get to know their patients better, understanding and being more aware of the assumptions they may naturally make. It also is because diversity would be accepted and expected and celebrated. Physicians would be leading the way in this understanding. We are the experts on human biology. So saying, yes, this is part of biodiversity will ripple out into society into greater acceptance. And transgender and non binary patients, gender creative patients in any way, would get better medical care. And in turn, many other people would get better medical care too. But especially for transgender and non binary patients, they would no longer have to gear up, armor up, as I've heard some patients describe, armor up to prepare themselves for the lack of affirmation, for the trauma that many times they experience just trying to get healthcare, whether it is medical transition care or whether it is preventative care or whether it is treatment for disease or any sort of accident, anything, that there would be less fear of trauma. I think all of those things are something we would want for ourselves, our loved ones, our families. Because think back about why you even went to medical school. I'm guessing that nobody is saying, well, I went to medical school because I really wanted to increase the resilience of my patients by making way more adverse experiences by them getting healthcare. Like, that's how I wanted to contribute. Let me really create an adverse environment, make it really difficult so many patients don't even want to get healthcare. But those that do, well, they're going to be stronger and more resilient. No, that is not, I don't remember that answer out of anyone when I was in medical school. The most common answer is we wanted to help patients. We wanted to improve people's lives. We wanted to help them have better quality of life, have longer lives of pain-free, disease-free as long as possible. However, the statistics among transgender and non-binary community do not support that. We are doing more harm. And that is hard for me to tell you because I know as a physician that hurts to hear. I know that it's really easy to want to say, "Hey, but that's not me." But we're part of the system. So we have to take a look at it because what is going on right now is we have patients avoiding care even when they need it. We have patients having harmful, hurtful experiences by our words, by our misunderstanding. Even if our intention is good, we have to take it a step further because we may still be doing harm. If we're like, well, I'll listen to a podcast, I'm good. I don't want to dismiss. It is great to start with that awareness and that understanding. And we have to keep going and keep making progress. The other thing that we know is happening is that we're increasing the stress and many times in an already stressful situation. So, some of you may know that I am on a nationally funded committee looking at cancer disparities for transgender and non binary patients. Cancer is a very stressful experience. Now, put on top of that stressful experience, having to wonder, wanting to get the care to fight the cancer, but at the same time, having to worry about are you going to be misgendered again? Are they going to use the name? How many times are you going to have to correct? How many times are you going to explain? How is your correction going to be responded to? Are you going to get an eye roll? Are you going to get a tense? Are you going to get acceptance? Are you going to get understanding? We are making already stressful situations even more stressful unintentionally. And the thing is, I know that we can do better. I know we can do better. And by working on this for the transgender and non binary community, where these experiences are the most pronounced, we're going to help all our patients because these experiences exist outside of that community as well. There's a lot of frustration from patients that I hear about not being heard, about assumptions being made based on a few things, a few words, and patients not feeling they get the care they want, regardless of how they identify. Again, I hesitate to tell you this because I know that those of you that are listening work heart and soul. You're here because you want to do better. You desire to do better. And I know you will do better. I know you can do better. I know we all can do better. I know that we all are not perfect, myself included. And I know we can do better. Even though one of the things that happen here is we're up against challenging conditions, that the healthcare system is not set up to support many of the providers. It's not set up to support many of the patients. All of those concerns are valid. They are valid. And I know that we don't want to lose our humanity, the humanity that brought us into this profession. What I want to offer you is learning about gender and the diversity of people and nature has increased my humanity, has helped me stay connected to it. I have experienced it. And others have told me how much their relationships with the people they help, the people they provide for, has improved, whether they have listened to me give a talk, whether they have done a consult with me, whether I have discussed a business audit with them on their paperwork or their language or their brick and mortar, whatever it is. I often get the feedback that the awareness that is created through the education that I've provided or that they get from anywhere else, that education has helped them to make less assumptions with all of their patients, that they find themselves more open and having deeper, better connections and better able to serve the people that they are working with. So I think of that promise I made to my family over 11 years ago to make this world a better place for all of us, for everyone through education. And I'll be honest, the other day I was reflecting on it and I got a bit emotional because I thought I had not done enough. that there had been many times in the last 11 years that my focus might have been moved, it might have changed, whether to help other aspects of my family, raising my family. And I think this reflection came up in such a negative manner, especially because in the last month, I've had people I really care about who are transgender and non binary share with me negative experiences in healthcare over the past month. Negative experiences that could be changed and improved just a little bit of knowledge, with just a little bit of training, with just some awareness and willingness to learn and to make some very minute changes. But having these people I care about, having experienced, some would describe it as trauma, some feeling sad, some feeling frustrated, some feeling angry. I began to reflect on the last 11 years and that promise I made and whether I had done enough, whether I had upheld my commitment. And being the life coach that I am, as I began to spiral into this negativity of all that was lacking, all that I might have missed, I reminded myself to look instead at all the things that had changed. And I began to reflect on what's changed in the last decade plus. Like now, people are asking about pronouns. Nobody was aware of, I shouldn't say nobody, but most providers were not aware of pronouns over a decade ago. There is an awareness to even ask how somebody identifies, what name they would like to use. There's a greater awareness and there's more examples of normalization where, whether it's the provider or the person welcoming them or checking them in, anyone that hears or becomes aware of a person's gender identity, that there's less of a response, a less of a discomfort, but it's more normalized. Like, okay, all right, great. And so there are these changes that are occurring. And we still have a long way to go. That's not occurring everywhere across the board, but it's happening more now than it did 10 years ago. And we have to see where else we have to go. We have to continue on that long journey. Knowing how to use the name and pronouns once they're given is really important and so important. I'll probably do another episode on that. But asking is a great start, but it's not enough. Also, training all of the staff to understand gender, giving them space to be able to ask questions without being worried about getting fired, gain an understanding, be given more than just a checklist. Here are the things to say, here are the things not to say, here are the things to do, but truly understand gender. So they don't have to be afraid of the what ifs. What if I get this wrong? And the other part of our journey has to be the learning of the basics. We have to begin to learn the basics for everyone. And this journey as a healthcare system is going to be long. It's not going to be linear. It already hasn't been linear. There will be detours. There will be unexpected roadblocks. There will be unexpected diversions. Similar, although I hope not so many roadblocks and detours, but similar to the over 2,000-mile road trip my son and I are about to embark on. Sometimes it seems overwhelming for us. Now, for some people, over 2,000 miles may not seem like a big deal, but for us, it's almost 10 times as much as what we normally do in a road trip. And so it can become overwhelming having never done something like this. And so sometimes we just need to focus on what's the first stop. This is how far I need to get on the first day. I may not have experience driving over 2,000 miles, but I can do 700. And focusing on that, getting to that first stop. And the reason that sometimes we have to narrow in the focus or bring it a little bit closer to us is because it allows us to move forward. Sometimes when it seems so far away, we can't even start. It seems impossible. But when we bring it a little, if I can just get to here, if I can make this change, if I can go just a little bit, do this one thing, like the whole thing seems too big. I don't have time for it. But can I do this amount? Can I take that first step The reason we do that is to get moving, is to start moving forward. And then as we go, we might think, oh, we still have so far to go. Don't forget to stop and look how far you came. Oh my goodness, 700 miles down, 1,300 to go, or whatever. Don't forget to look at the progress that you've made. And when that feels like not enough to keep going, to keep moving forward, remember why you are on that journey. Remember why you even agreed to take the adventure. This sweet reward at the end. For us, it's getting to our destination. But for the healthcare system working on being more inclusive in gender, it's that sweet reward of walking out of a patient's room and feeling like you served them well, feeling like you heard them, you were able to help. Those moments when patients tell you, I was so afraid to come in and see you because I didn't know what you would say or do, whether you would understand me. And I'm so grateful I came in today. Thank you. Those moments, not that we need to be thanked or anything like that, but those moments, those moments, they remind us of why we became a physician to begin with. They remind us why we love this job so much. So I will, as I take this long trek and getting ready to say goodbye to my oldest child, I'll remember the why. And I will take time along the way to think, because we'll have a lot of miles of thinking to reflect further on the progress that we have made as a medical community, and to also think about the steps I'd like to continue to make. I will consider what I can do to help us continue to move forward. And I want to invite you to do the same thing. What can you do? Don't think of the long journey. What's the next step you can do? Whether that's spending a few minutes to educate yourself, a few minutes a week, not looking at all that you have to learn, but just the one thing you have to learn. I mean, this is the reason, as some of you know, I have the School for Engendering Inclusivity, which has classes to help people understand gender. And I set it up so that you can give 10 to 20 minutes and just expand your learning a little bit in 10 to 20 minutes at a time. You may feel like it's going to take hours, but do you have 10 to 20 minutes and just keep doing that a little bit at a time? Or maybe that's not what you need or want to do. Maybe that's not the best way you learn. Maybe bringing speakers in to talk to your whole department. Maybe you're like, I need a little bit, but we all need a little bit. And so you bring speakers in. This is something I do and many other gender educators do to improve patient care, to increase your understanding, to give you ideas on practice methods that will help all of your patients. Or maybe you feel like you've got that under control, but another thing that many times helps providers is an audit of their business, looking at their business, looking at their paperwork that maybe they haven't looked at. They don't have the time to review it and see where could they improve on being more inclusive. Maybe it's the training of their staff. Maybe it is their website. That do an audit of the business of how to be more inclusive, not just to check the marks, check the boxes, did I do all the things, but to use that to create a greater understanding. Why should this be changed? If we're going to change this, how are we going to use this? If we're going to put this on our paperwork, how do we implement it to actually work in the way that we intend? So, whatever it is, and there may be other ideas that I'm not even thinking of. And so, if you have another step that we can make as healthcare providers, email me, share it with me, and I will share it with the audience because together we can learn from each other. Together we can figure out ways we can do better and take those next steps. So, whatever it is that helps you move a little bit forward to be the practitioner you dreamed about, choose that. Say, yes, this is what I'm going to do today, this week, this month. Decide on that one thing and commit to it. And understand that that sweet reward is to move away from being a provider that feels shame, something I hear a lot about from providers that share with me, physicians that share with me, the shame of not knowing, feeling like they can't help or worried that they're going to make lots of mistakes. Take that step that's going to move you away from those experiences. Take that step that's going to move you closer to being the provider that is doing better and making progress. who celebrates what they have done. Think about your understanding of patients and your patient care now compared to a year ago, compared to when you finished residency or fellowship, when you graduated from medical school. Just look at the progress you make and take a look at where you still would like to go. All for that destiny of providing excellent patient care the way you imagined you would when you first decided to become a doctor. I believe you can do it. I believe we can do it together. And it's worth the discomfort we may feel at times. It's worth the hope because progress matters.